At 2 a.m., my sister stole my credit card while I slept. By morning, $14,800 was gone, blown on a luxury trip to Japan and gifts for our cousin. A week later, she returned, and Dad scoffed, "Stop lying. She'd never touch your money." I only smiled, because the card she used. I grew up in a family where money was always complicated. We weren't poor, not by any stretch, but we weren't the kind of family that splurged either. My parents raised us with this constant sermon about living within your means and earning what you spend. At least, that's what they told me. With my sister, things always seemed different. She was the youngest, the baby of the family, and for as long as I can remember, she could do no wrong in my father's eyes. If I forgot to take out the trash, why can't you be more responsible? If she broke a vase, it's just a thing, don't overreact. That imbalance used to bother me, but I learned to live with it. I worked, saved, paid my bills. She partied, borrowed, and spent money like it was an infinite fountain. And somehow, she always landed on her feet, usually because Dad stepped in to bail her out. The irony is, I was the one everyone called too uptight. I budgeted, tracked my expenses, and kept my credit score clean because I wanted stability. Maybe it made me sound boring, but I liked knowing I was building something. So when I finally qualified for a higher credit line, I felt proud. That card wasn't just plastic. It was proof that I was doing something right. My sister noticed, of course. She always noticed when I had something she didn't. She joked about it a couple of times. "Wow, look at you, Mr. Fancy," she'd say, pretending to hold the card like it was a golden ticket. I laughed it off, but deep down, there was a flicker of unease. With her, jokes often had a sharp edge. Family dinners were the worst. Dad would ask me why I didn't travel more, why I was so careful with my money when life's too short. Then, without missing a beat, he'd praise my sister for living in the moment. I never argued, because what was the point? No matter what I said, I'd come off as bitter. So I let it slide, even when I felt like an outsider in my own family. The truth is, I never thought she'd cross certain lines. Borrowing $50, sure. Forgetting to pay me back, of course. But stealing? That felt like a bridge too far, even for her. Looking back, I realized the signs were all there. She'd recently been bragging about wanting to go on a big adventure, something once in a lifetime. Her eyes lit up when she talked about Tokyo, anime stores, neon nights, sushi trains. I thought it was just another dream she couldn't afford. She'd laugh about how she'd find a way. I didn't take her seriously. I should have, because the night it happened, I went to bed thinking everything in my life was under control. I had money in my account, plans for the weekend, a sense of calm. I had no idea that in just a few hours, I'd wake up to a reality where nearly $15,000 had vanished, and my own family would accuse me of making it all up. I remember that morning with disturbing clarity. It was 7:30 a.m., sunlight bleeding through the blinds, my phone buzzing with the usual notifications. I rolled over, half asleep, until I noticed the screen lit up with messages I'd never seen before. Bank alert. Recent transaction detected. Then another. And another. At first, I thought it was spam. I squinted at the amounts, rubbing my eyes. $1,200. $3,400. $2,800. The numbers blurred together, but the total made my stomach drop. Nearly $15,000 had been charged overnight. Flights, hotels, designer shopping, all in rapid succession, like someone had gone on a spree while I slept. I shot upright in bed, heart hammering. My first instinct was panic. Had my card been hacked? I scrambled for my wallet, pulled out the credit card, and stared at it. It was still there, tucked safely behind the plastic sleeve. For a split second, I thought maybe I was losing my mind. Then the pattern hit me. The charges weren't random. They were all tied to Tokyo. Hotels in Shinjuku. A luxury boutique in Ginza. Even an airline ticket. One passenger, business class, flying out that very morning. My throat tightened as the realization crept in. Tokyo. My sister had been talking about Tokyo nonstop for weeks. I didn't want to believe it. I told myself it had to be coincidence. But the timing, the amounts, the fact that the card was physically with me, yet clearly used, there was only one explanation. She had my card info. She must have taken it sometime when I wasn't looking, maybe late at night while I was asleep. I felt sick, betrayed. But more than anything, I felt stupid. How could I have ignored the signs? How could I let my own sister, the person I grew up with, do this to me? I called the bank immediately. My voice shook as I explained the situation, rattling off fraudulent charges. The rep on the other end was calm, professional, even sympathetic. "We'll freeze the card right away," she said. "You won't be held liable, but you'll need to file a report." Relief should have washed over me, but it didn't. Because while the money might eventually be refunded, the betrayal was permanent. The person who did this wasn't some faceless hacker. It was my own blood. I stumbled into the kitchen, pacing like a caged animal. Every sound felt amplified. The hum of the fridge, the clink of the spoon in the sink. My mind kept replaying her words from just a week earlier. "Don't worry, I'll find a way." And now I knew exactly what she meant. By the time my parents woke up, I had already printed the bank statement, highlighting the charges. I rehearsed how I would tell them, how they'd react, how maybe, finally, they would see the truth about their angel. But when I sat across from them at breakfast, paper trembling in my hand, my dad barely glanced at it before pushing it back across the table. "Stop lying," he scoffed, his voice dripping with contempt. "Your sister would never touch your money." In that moment, the betrayal doubled. Not only had she stolen from me, but my own father was calling me a liar. And the worst part? My sister wasn't even there to defend herself. She was already on a plane to Japan, smiling at 30,000 feet, while I sat at the kitchen table, accused of making everything up. I clenched my jaw, forcing myself not to shout, not to break down. I just sat there, silent, the paper burning in my hands. But that was only the beginning. The days that followed were some of the most surreal of my life. I kept telling myself there had to be another explanation. Maybe it really was identity theft. Maybe the bank records were incomplete. Maybe I was paranoid, projecting my sister's obsession with Japan onto something that wasn't her fault. That little voice kept whispering in my head, "She wouldn't do this to you." She couldn't. But every time I looked at the transactions, that whisper got drowned out by cold, undeniable facts. One night, I sat down at my laptop and pulled up the flight details from the bank's fraud report. Tokyo, departing 9:55 a.m. The passenger's last name wasn't even hidden. It matched mine exactly. Same spelling, same middle initial. It wasn't random. It was family. I remember leaning back in my chair, my pulse racing, palms sweating. I wanted so badly to be wrong. But the more I dug, the more the pieces locked together. I searched through her social media, something I normally never bothered with. Her Instagram had gone suspiciously quiet. No new posts, no stories, nothing. But then I checked her cousin's profile, the one she was always glued to. And there it was, a photo of them at the airport. It was posted just hours after the charges hit my account. I stared at the screen until my eyes blurred. It wasn't even subtle. She looked radiant, dragging a brand new suitcase behind her, flashing a peace sign like it was the best day of her life. My credit card had literally bought her dream trip. I felt my stomach twist. I screenshotted everything, flight details, the airport photo, even the timestamp. I thought, this is it. They can't deny this. I'd show my parents, and the truth would finally be undeniable. But when I brought it up to my dad, he barely looked. He just shook his head and muttered, "Stop embarrassing yourself. You sound jealous." Jealous. As if losing $14,800 and being treated like a fool was some kind of envy problem. That word burned. Jealous. Like I was just bitter that she got to live freely while I played the responsible one. Like all my effort to build a stable life meant nothing. It was then I realized I wasn't just fighting her theft. I was fighting a whole narrative my family had built around her. To them, she could do no wrong. And to admit she had crossed this line would mean rewriting years of excuses and blind devotion. But as much as they wanted to keep the story alive, reality kept clawing at me. Because the next morning, my phone buzzed again. This time not from the bank, but from a friend who happened to be traveling in Japan. His message was short, almost casual. "Dude, pretty sure I just saw your sister in Shibuya. She was with cousin's name, carrying a Louis Vuitton bag. Looked new." My heart dropped. I hadn't told him a word about the stolen card. And yet here he was, describing in detail the very things my money had bought her. That's when I knew my worst fears weren't paranoia, they were proof. I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, my brain replayed those numbers, those charges, that photo of her at the airport with our cousin. I tried to tell myself maybe I was wrong, maybe it wasn't her, maybe there was still some angle I hadn't considered. But deep down I knew. The following morning, I went back to the bank, not just a phone call this time, but in person. I wanted papers, something I could hold, something no one could dismiss with a wave of their hand. The clerk printed out a stack of documents for me. Timestamps, transaction logs, merchant records. My stomach twisted as I flipped through them. And then I saw it. Clear as day. The flight purchase, issued under her full legal name. Not just the last name, not just initials, her full name, her passport number linked for international verification. There was no doubt anymore. It was her. I remember gripping the papers so hard my knuckles went white. My chest felt tight, like I couldn't breathe. Betrayal has a way of turning physical. My hands trembled, my throat burned, and for a split second I thought I might throw up right there at the counter. The clerk gave me a sympathetic look, as if to say, "I'm sorry you had to see this." Walking out of that bank felt like walking in slow motion. The city around me kept moving, cars honking, people rushing to work, but I was stuck in this bubble of disbelief. My sister hadn't just crossed a line. She'd obliterated it. On the train ride home, I kept staring at her name on that boarding pass, as if somehow the letters would rearrange themselves and prove me wrong. But they didn't. They stayed the same, mocking me with their permanence. That night, sleep didn't come at all. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, my mind flooding with memories. Every time Dad had defended her. Every time I had been called too harsh for pointing out her behavior. The vase she broke when we were kids and blamed on me. The time she borrowed my laptop and racked up charges on gaming sites, and I got yelled at for not supervising her. It was always the same story. She did something reckless. I paid for it, literally or figuratively, and Dad swooped in to protect her, as if shielding her from consequences was some kind of parental duty. I thought about all those moments, and it hit me like a punch in the gut. This wasn't new. The stakes were higher now, but the pattern was the same. And if I didn't stop it here, it was never going to end. Still, I wasn't ready to face the storm. I tried, once again, to bring the evidence to my parents. I spread the papers across the dining table like a prosecutor presenting a case. "Look," I said, my voice shaking, "this isn't a theory. Her name, her passport, her signature." Mom's eyes flickered as she scanned the documents. For a moment, I thought I saw recognition, even guilt. But before she could speak, Dad slammed his hand down on the table. "Enough," he barked. "I won't listen to another word of this. Do you hear me? You're obsessed. You've always been jealous of her." Jealous. That word again. It sliced through me like glass. I turned to Mom, desperate. "You know it's true. Please, just admit it." She didn't meet my eyes. Instead, she lowered her voice and said something I'll never forget. "Yes, I knew. I knew she took it. But she's your sister. Family. Do you really want to ruin her life over a mistake?" Her words knocked the air out of me. She knew. She had known all along. And rather than stop her, or support me, she chose silence. I felt the floor tilt beneath me, like the world itself had shifted. My mother, the person I trusted to be fair, had chosen loyalty to the family narrative over loyalty to the truth. I stumbled out of the room, papers clutched in my hand, my mind spinning. It wasn't just my sister who betrayed me. It was both of them. My whole family was complicit in protecting her. And that's when I realized I wasn't just fighting my sister. I was fighting my entire family. I thought the bank papers were the end of it, that there was nothing left to uncover. But the truth has a way of peeling itself back in layers, each one worse than the last. A few days later, I got a call from the fraud department. They wanted to confirm details for their investigation. The agent's voice was calm, rehearsed, but then she said something that made my chest tighten. "For international travel, the merchant required a passport check. Your sister provided hers at the counter." I froze. "Wait, so they actually saw her ID?" "Yes. We have a copy on file. Do you want us to include it in the case file?" I hung up, my pulse racing. It wasn't just numbers on a screen anymore. It wasn't just an Instagram photo. My sister had walked up to a counter, smiled at the attendant, and handed over her passport, my debt in her hands, without a shred of hesitation. That image haunted me. I pictured her standing there, confident, maybe even proud, thinking she had pulled off the perfect trick. No fear, no second thoughts, just entitlement. Later that evening, I checked social media again, almost against my will. And there it was, more proof I didn't want to see. My cousin had posted stories, neon streets, sushi spreads, designer shopping bags spilling across a hotel bed. In one clip, my sister's voice was unmistakable, laughing as she unboxed something from Louis Vuitton. My card had paid for that laugh. I wanted to throw my phone across the room. Every second of footage felt like a knife twist. It wasn't just the money. It was the sheer audacity. She wasn't hiding. She was flaunting it. And the whole world, or at least her little circle, got to see her live a life I had literally been working years to afford. That night, I sat at my desk staring at the bills piling up. $14,800 in pending charges. My credit score already dipping from the sudden spike in debt. The bank assured me I wouldn't be liable in the end, but the process could take weeks, maybe months. In the meantime, I had no card, no credit line, and a family that thought I was the villain. And then another thought struck me. What if she did this again? What if she had already memorized my new card info? What if she had access to other accounts? My entire financial stability felt like a house of cards, and she was the storm circling outside. I barely ate. I barely slept. I kept pacing the apartment, checking statements every hour like a man waiting for the next strike. I wasn't just angry anymore. I was scared. Scared of how far she'd go. Scared of how much my parents would enable her. Scared of being trapped in a life where nothing I built could survive her selfishness. And for the first time, I admitted something to myself. This wasn't just about money. It was about identity. About the way my family had always erased me to protect her. If I let this slide, I wasn't just losing $14,800. I was losing myself. And that's when it hit me. This wasn't just theft. It was war. And I was outnumbered. The nights blurred together. I'd lie awake staring at the ceiling, replaying every possible outcome like a movie on a loop. Part of me wanted to keep quiet, swallow the loss, let the bank handle it, and never mention her name again. That path meant peace, or at least silence. It meant not being the traitor in my family's story. But the other part of me, the louder part, couldn't let it go. Every time I imagined her laughing in some Tokyo cafe while I checked my dwindling balance, my chest burned. It wasn't just anger, it was humiliation. She stole from me, and then she strutted around like a queen while I was left looking like the liar. I thought about my parents, how they would never see her the way I did, how Dad would twist everything to paint me as bitter, how Mom would whisper that family comes first. But what about me? Wasn't I family too? Or was my role always to be the scapegoat, the punching bag, the one who kept the peace by sacrificing myself? I tried to picture the future if I stayed quiet. Birthdays, holidays, dinners where she smiled across the table, wearing clothes I'd unknowingly bought for her. Every glance from Dad would still carry that edge of disdain, as if I'd made the whole thing up. That thought was unbearable. And then the fear crept in. If she did it once, why wouldn't she do it again? She had no reason to stop. My silence would be her green light. And if she was bold enough to hand over her passport for a stolen card, then she wasn't scared of consequences, because she believed there wouldn't be any. That was the breaking point. I realized this wasn't just about saving face. It was about survival, about drawing a line I should have drawn years ago. I sat at my desk, staring at the pile of papers, the screenshots, the bank statements. My hand shook as I slid them into a folder. It felt like loading a weapon. After weeks of sleepless nights, I finally knew what I had to do. The morning I finally acted, the sky felt heavier than usual, gray clouds pressing down, as if even the weather knew I was about to cross a line I couldn't step back from. I carried the folder with me, stuffed with papers, screenshots, and bank statements. My hands were clammy, my pulse fast. It felt less like carrying evidence and more like hauling a live grenade. At the police station, I sat across from a young officer who barely looked old enough to shave. He listened carefully, nodding as I laid out the timeline. The late-night charges, the Tokyo flight, the bank's confirmation, the photos. When I slid the boarding pass across the desk, his brows rose slightly. "This is solid," he said. "You've got enough here to file a formal report. Once we log it, the investigation is official. She'll be contacted." I swallowed hard. Contacted. The word hit like a hammer. Once her name was on paper, there was no erasing it. No family-first speeches, no sweeping it under the rug. This was the line in the sand. I signed the forms with a shaky hand. Each signature felt like a betrayal, not of her, but of the story my family had forced me to live in. The story where she was the angel, and I was the bitter, jealous brother. For the first time, I was rewriting that script. When I left the station, a strange calm settled over me. It wasn't peace, not really, but it was something close to control. For weeks I had been trapped in this endless cycle of doubt and humiliation. Now, at least, The ball wasn't in my court anymore. The system would handle it. Justice, finally, felt possible. But that calm didn't last long. That evening, my father stormed into my apartment without knocking. His face was red, his jaw clenched, and his voice thundered before the door even closed behind him. "What the hell did you do?" he barked. I tried to explain, tried to show him the papers again, the signatures, the proof, but he wouldn't even look. "You went to the police? Your own sister? Over money? You've destroyed this family. Do you realize that?" I felt heat rising in my chest. "She stole from me, Dad. $15,000. She lied, and you defended her." His eyes blazed. "She's blood. You don't drag family through courts. You handle it inside." "But no, you had to make it official. You had to make her life harder, because you've always been jealous." There it was again. Jealous. The word that never died. I didn't shout back. I didn't cry. I just stood there, exhausted, and said, "I'm done being the scapegoat. If she wanted to ruin my life, she should have thought about consequences first." The silence that followed was louder than his yelling. For the first time, I saw it in his eyes, not doubt, not anger, but fear. Fear that his perfect narrative was unraveling. He left without another word, slamming the door so hard the walls shook. For a brief moment after, I let myself believe it was over, that I had finally done enough. But I couldn't have been more wrong. The days after my father's outburst felt eerily quiet. Too quiet. I kept expecting another confrontation, another storm at my door, but nothing came. My phone stopped buzzing with accusations. Mom didn't call. Even my sister, halfway across the world, went silent. No more Instagram stories, no smug updates from Japan. Just nothing. At first, it unsettled me. I'd gotten used to living in constant tension, waiting for the next blow. The silence felt unnatural, like walking through a house after a party, the air still thick with echoes. But slowly, I let myself believe maybe this was the end. The bank assured me the investigation was moving forward. The officer I spoke with said my file was solid, airtight even. "It's just a matter of time," he told me. For the first time in weeks, I slept a full night. A strange optimism crept in. I started cooking again, eating proper meals instead of surviving on cold leftovers and coffee. I even went for a run, something I hadn't done in months. The air felt lighter, my steps less heavy. Maybe I had done it. Maybe I had actually broken the cycle. I imagined my sister back home, cornered by the reality of what she'd done. I pictured her realizing she couldn't charm her way out this time, that she couldn't hide behind Dad's excuses or Mom's soft whispers. She'd have to face consequences, real ones. That thought carried me through those quiet days. But calm has a way of lying. It whispers that you're safe right before the ground caves in beneath you. Because just when I started to believe the worst was over, I heard the front door slam open one evening. Heavy footsteps echoed down the hall, louder, faster, angrier than before. She was back, and she didn't come alone. The sound of footsteps coming down the hall was like a drumbeat in my chest. By the time I looked up, she was standing in the doorway, my sister. Tanned from her trip, hair styled, a designer bag slung over her shoulder. And right behind her, like shadows at her back, were my parents. The sight made my blood run cold. For a second, none of us spoke. She smirked, as if she were arriving at a dinner party instead of walking into the home of the brother she'd just robbed. "Well," she said, dropping her bag onto the floor with a thud, "you've really outdone yourself this time." I clenched my jaw. "You mean reporting you for stealing $15,000 from me?" Her smirk twisted into something uglier. "Oh, please. You gave me the card. Don't act like you didn't." My stomach flipped. "I never gave you anything. You took it while I was asleep." Dad stepped forward then, his face hard, voice booming. "Enough. She told us everything. You're twisting this into something it's not. She said you agreed to help with the trip, and now you're punishing her because you regret it." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "Do you even hear yourselves? You're defending theft because it's easier than admitting she lied." Mom's voice was softer, but no less cutting. "She made a mistake. She shouldn't have taken so much, but going to the police? Filing reports? You're destroying your own blood." I looked at my sister, waiting for even a flicker of remorse. But she only folded her arms, eyes glittering with defiance. "You've always hated me for living my life. Admit it. This isn't about money. It's about you being bitter and pathetic." Something inside me snapped. Weeks of sleepless nights, the humiliation, the denial, all of it boiled over. My voice shook, but it was steady enough to cut through the room. This isn't about jealousy. This isn't about family. This is about you stealing from me, laughing about it, and then daring to blame me when I fight back. The room went silent. For a moment, I thought maybe I'd broken through. But then Dad shook his head, disappointment etched deep into his face. "You've changed," he muttered. "You'd rather see your sister in prison than protect this family. You're no son of mine." The words hit harder than I expected. They weren't shouted, they were worse. Cold. Final. My sister leaned in, whispering like she was delivering a secret meant to wound. "Guess what, big brother? They'll believe me before they ever believe you. They always have. They always will." I wanted to scream, to throw the papers in her face, to force them all to see the truth. But as I looked at the three of them, my parents defending her, my sister smirking in triumph, I realized the truth didn't matter here. Not in this house. Not with these people. My evidence could fill a library, and they would still call me jealous. Because this wasn't about facts. It was about loyalty. And in this family, loyalty only ever pointed one way, toward her. The air in the room grew heavy, suffocating. My chest ached with a mix of rage and grief. For the first time in my life, I understood that my family wasn't my family. They were her shield, her army, her excuse to keep destroying everything in her path. And standing there, facing all three of them, I knew I had lost them long before I even filed that police report. But losing them wasn't the end. It was just the beginning of the real fight. After they left, the silence in my apartment was suffocating. The air still carried the echo of my father's words. "You're no son of mine." They rang in my head like a verdict, louder than any door slam. I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the folder of evidence I had once clung to like a shield. Now it just looked like scraps of paper no one wanted to believe. The truth should have been enough. But it wasn't. Not for them. Not for the people whose validation I had chased my whole life. I didn't eat that night. I didn't sleep. I just paced the apartment in circles, my chest tight, my throat raw from words I never got to say. My sister was back, smug and untouchable, flanked by the very people who were supposed to protect me. And I was alone. For the first time, I questioned everything. Was it worth it? Fighting her, fighting them, fighting the endless narrative that painted me as bitter, jealous, ungrateful? Maybe it was easier to give up, to let the bank handle it, to walk away, to never see them again. The thought slithered into my head and stayed there. What if you're wasting your life trying to win a battle you'll never win? I slumped into a chair, my hands covering my face. The weight of years pressed down on me. Every moment I'd been told to be the bigger person. Every time I'd swallowed anger so she could be spared. I felt like a fool, a puppet in a play I never agreed to perform. Tears came, not loud, not dramatic, just silent streaks of salt I hadn't let myself shed in years. Grief, rage, humiliation, they blurred together until I couldn't tell where one ended and the other began. And in that hollow place, another voice crept in. A colder one, a truer one. "If you stop now, she wins." I sat up straighter, wiping my face with the back of my hand. It wasn't about their approval anymore. It wasn't about making them see. It was about me. About finally drawing a line that couldn't be erased by excuses or denial. If they wanted to choose her over the truth, fine. Let them. But I still had something they didn't. Evidence. The law. The system that didn't care about family narratives. For once, I had the power to make her face consequences she couldn't charm her way out of. The despair in my chest slowly hardened into something else. Resolve. I gathered the papers, slid them back into the folder, and held it tight. My hands were steady now. My pulse was still racing, but not from fear, from clarity. I knew exactly what I had to do to end this once and for all. The day of the hearing felt unreal, like I was walking through a movie where I played a version of myself I barely recognized. I wasn't the scapegoat anymore, the quiet brother who swallowed his anger. I was the complainant, the witness, the one with the folder of evidence that no amount of denial could erase. When my sister walked into the room, she didn't look like the carefree girl from Instagram anymore. Her hair was pulled back, her makeup muted, her shoulders tight. But her eyes, that same defiance burned there, daring me to back down even now. My father sat behind her, arms crossed, jaw clenched. My mother hovered nervously at his side. They didn't look at me once. The officer began by reviewing the case file, flipping through the documents I had provided. The boarding pass, the credit card statements, the copy of her passport from the airline. Each piece landed like a stone in the silence of the room. My sister shifted in her chair, her smirk flickering. When it was my turn to speak, I stood, hands steady on the folder. I didn't want it to come to this, I said, my voice low but clear. But she stole from me. And every time I tried to show my family the truth, they called me a liar. These papers aren't lies. They're facts. The officer turned to her. Do you deny making these purchases? She opened her mouth, but no words came out. For the first time, I saw cracks in her confidence. She tried to laugh, to brush it off. It was just a trip. He said he'd help. He's exaggerating. Ma'am, the officer interrupted, sliding the boarding pass across the table. You presented your passport when you used his card. This is your signature. Are you saying this document is falsified? Her mouth snapped shut. Dad leaned forward, desperate. This is family business. We can handle it ourselves. But the officer shook his head. Sir, theft of this magnitude is not a family matter. It's a crime. The weight of those words hung in the air. For once, the narrative wasn't in their control. I looked at my sister, waiting for her to lash out, to hurl accusations, but she didn't. Her shoulders sagged, her eyes dropped. For the first time, she looked small, not the golden child, not the angel, not the untouchable favorite. Just a person caught red-handed, finally unable to hide. Dad muttered under his breath, but his voice was hollow now. The authority he wielded so easily at home meant nothing here. Mom finally met my eyes, and for the briefest second, I thought I saw something like regret. But it was too late. When the officer finished outlining the consequences, pending charges, restitution, the possibility of a criminal record, my sister's face crumpled. The defiance was gone. She wasn't the girl laughing in Tokyo anymore. She was cornered, exposed. And in that moment, I felt something I hadn't expected. Not triumph, not joy, just release. The weight I had been carrying for weeks, maybe even years, lifted off my shoulders. I didn't gloat. I didn't spit venom. I just gathered my folder, stood, and said the words I had been holding in since the morning I saw the first charge on my phone. This isn't jealousy. This isn't revenge. This is accountability. And it's about damn time. The room stayed silent as I walked out. My footsteps echoed, each one lighter than the last. Outside, the air felt sharper, cleaner. For the first time in my life, I wasn't the one trapped under their narrative. I was free. And freedom, I realized, was the only thing they could never take from me again.